The Great Hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with worried voices. Ambassador HFY watched from his crystal seat as hundreds of alien species argued in panic. His blue, glass-like skin reflected the emergency lights that flashed across the massive dome above them. 17 star systems are gone, announced General Korth, his red scales gleaming under the harsh lights. The Braxian warrior's voice boomed across the hall, silencing the crowd. The Devourer fleet moves closer to our core worlds with each passing day. HFY felt his crystalline heart pulse faster. The Devourers were unlike any enemy the galaxy had ever faced. They weren't a normal army or even pirates. They were something far worse, living ships that ate entire planets, turning everything into fuel for their endless hunger. "Show them the reports from Kepler Station," ordered Council Leader Morath, her tentacles writhing with stress. The main screen lit up with terrible images, massive bioships, each one the size of a small moon, surrounded a beautiful blue planet. Within hours, the planet turned gray and dead. The ships grew larger, fed by everything they had consumed. Plants, animals, cities, even the atmosphere, all of it became part of the hungry fleet. No military force has ever survived direct contact with them, General Korth continued. Our best warships last maybe 20 minutes. They learn from every attack, adapt to every weapon we use against them. Ambassador Liron of the Zenthari raised a thin, pale hand. Her species valued logic above all else, and her voice stayed calm even in crisis. Our computers show that at their current speed, the Devourer fleet will reach the inner colonies in 6 months, population centers with over 1 trillion beings. The hall erupted in panicked chatter. Some ambassadors demanded evacuation plans. Others wanted to throw everything they had at the enemy in one final battle. A few suggested hiding in the outer rim and hoping the Devourers would miss them. HFY's eyes drifted to a forgotten corner of the hall. There, covered in dust and surrounded by old storage containers, sat a communication terminal unlike any other. It was black and angular, built with human technology. Above it, barely visible letters spelled out one word: Earth. For over 200 years, that terminal had sat unused. The galaxy had cut all contact with humanity after the Andromedan War. The humans had offered their help back then, and they had won the war. But their methods, even now, HFY shuddered thinking about what the humans had done to end that conflict. "Perhaps we should consider all options," said a small voice from the back of the hall. Ambassador Kelathis of the Polvani was young for her species, barely 50 standard years old. Her purple skin showed the nervousness that her people couldn't hide. "There are other sources of military aid we haven't explored." The hall went silent. Every eye turned to look at her, then slowly moved to stare at the dusty Earth terminal. "Absolutely not," growled General Korth. "We agreed long ago that human methods are too extreme for civilized warfare. They don't just defeat enemies, they destroy them completely. No mercy, no honor, no limits." Admiral Thexan of the proud Arion Empire spread his golden wings wide. "The humans wage war like a disease. They target everything: military bases, supply lines, civilian factories, even the enemy's will to live. When they fight to erase their enemies from existence." "But they win," whispered Ambassador Kelathis. "At what cost?" shot back the Admiral. "During the Andromedan War, they didn't just defeat the invaders. They hunted down every last ship, destroyed their home worlds, made sure that species could never threaten anyone again. They turned victory into genocide." HFY remembered those old reports. The Andromeda Galaxy had sent robot fleets to conquer their galaxy 3 centuries ago. The machines were advanced and ruthless, treating organic life as a disease to be eliminated. For 50 years, the galactic forces fought and lost ground steadily. Then humanity had volunteered to help. Within 10 years, Not a single Andromedan machine remained functional anywhere in known space. The humans had created viruses that corrupted the robots' programming, built weapons that turned the machines against each other, and hunted down every last automated factory that could build more invaders. The victory was complete. Too complete. The galactic community had been horrified by humanity's thoroughness. They feared that someday humans might turn those same methods against their former allies. "The Devourers are different," said Council Leader Morath, her voice heavy with thought. "They cannot be reasoned with, cannot be negotiated with. They exist only to consume. Perhaps such an enemy requires—" "No," interrupted several voices at once. "We are not barbarians," declared Ambassador Valix of the Peaceful Harmony Collective. "We do not solve problems by becoming the very monsters we fight against. There has to be another way." But as the debate continued, more reports came in. The Tau Ceti system had just sent out a distress call. The Devourer fleet had changed course and was heading straight for their industrial worlds. 12 billion beings lived in that system. Zexhai looked around the hall at his fellow ambassadors. Fear showed on every face, regardless of species. Some had already started making plans to evacuate their home worlds. Others stared at tactical displays, hoping someone would find a miracle solution that didn't involve calling the humans. The Earth terminal sat in its corner, patient and silent, waiting for someone to be desperate enough to press its activation button, waiting for the galaxy to admit that sometimes civilization needed monsters to defend it from bigger monsters. As another system sent out its final transmission before going dark, Zexhai wondered how many more worlds would have to die before someone finally made that terrible call. 3 weeks passed, and 3 more star systems went silent. The Galactic Council met every day now, but their meetings felt more like funeral services. Each session started with Admiral Thexan reading the names of dead worlds. "Aquatica Prime fell yesterday at 14:30 Standard Time," the golden-winged Admiral announced. His voice had lost its usual strength. "Population, 8 billion Merathi. Their ocean cities held out for 6 hours longer than our models predicted." Ambassador Zexhai closed his crystal eyes. The Merathi were peaceful beings who had never hurt anyone. They spent their lives creating beautiful coral cities beneath their world's endless seas. Now those cities were nothing but organic matter feeding the Devourer fleet's endless hunger. The main screen showed tactical reports that made everyone's blood run cold. The enemy bioships had grown larger after consuming Aquatica Prime. Worse, they were moving faster than before, as if each meal made them stronger and more eager for the next one. "The Devourer fleet has changed its behavior pattern," reported Ambassador Lyran, her pale face focused on data streams flowing across her tablet. "They're no longer moving in a straight line through space. They're actively hunting for the most populated systems." General Korth slammed a scaled fist on his console. "How is that possible? These creatures don't use normal communication methods. They shouldn't be able to coordinate across such vast distances." "They seem to share some kind of group mind," answered Dr. Quillen of the Science Directorate. The small gray being adjusted his translation device before continuing. "Our xenobiologists believe they function like a single massive organism. Each ship is more like a cell in a body than an individual vessel." The implications sent chills through the assembly hall. If the Devourer fleet was actually one giant creature spread across hundreds of bioships, then conventional military tactics were useless. How do you fight something that has no command structure to disrupt? No supply lines to cut? No morale to break? "We need to discuss evacuation procedures," said Council Leader Morath. Her tentacles moved in slow, tired patterns. "The outer rim colonies can support perhaps 1% of our core world populations. If we start moving people now—" "Where?" interrupted Ambassador Kelethis. The young Polvani had grown bolder over the past weeks as the crisis deepened. The Devourers can follow us anywhere. They move faster than our civilian transports. Running just delays the inevitable. Then what do you suggest? Asked Admiral Thexun, his golden feathers ruffling with frustration. Calithus looked toward the dusty corner where the Earth terminal waited. I suggest we consider options we've been too proud to use. The hall went quiet. Everyone knew what she meant. But no one wanted to say it out loud. The communication link to Earth sat exactly where it had for 2 centuries, untouched and unused. A direct line to the most dangerous military force the galaxy had ever known. The humans have been silent for too long, said General Korth. For all we know, they've destroyed themselves with their own weapons. Their species was always too violent to last. Or maybe they're waiting, countered Ambassador Zexhai. The words surprised him as much as everyone else. He hadn't planned to speak, but the thought had been growing in his mind for days. Maybe they're waiting for us to realize that some problems require extreme solutions. The humans nearly destroyed this entire galaxy cluster, Admiral Thexun reminded the assembly. During the Andromedan War, they didn't just win battles. They erased the enemy from existence. No prisoners, no mercy, no survivors. They turned warfare into extinction. Dr. Quill-Ann adjusted his translation device again. But they saved us. Without human intervention, the Andromedan machines would have killed every organic being in our galaxy. Perhaps their methods were harsh, but the results were terrifying, finished Ambassador Valix of the Harmony Collective. Yes, they won. But they showed us that they were capable of complete genocide when they deemed it necessary. What happens when they decide that we are the threat? A new alarm started blaring through the hall. Emergency lights bathed everything in red as communication officers rushed to their stations. The main screen flickered to life, showing a real-time tactical display of the Rigel system. Incoming transmission from Rigel Defense Command, announced a technician. The image showed a Centauri commander, his blue skin pale with fear. Behind him, control room staff worked frantically at their stations. This is Admiral Clixon of the Rigel Defense Fleet. The Devourer bioships have entered our system. They'll reach our worlds in 18 hours. We have 47 billion beings here. We need immediate assistance. The transmission cut to external sensors showing the approach of the enemy fleet. Massive organic ships moved through space like swimming creatures, their hull surfaces pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. As they moved, smaller ships broke away from the main vessels like spores, spreading out to surround the entire system. How many ships are in their fleet now? Asked Council Leader Morath. Our long-range sensors count over 800 major bioships, reported Admiral Thexun. That's twice what they had when this started. They're growing exponentially with each system they consume. Ambassador Lyran looked up from her calculations. At their current growth rate, the Devourer fleet will be unstoppable within 2 months. Even if we gathered every military ship in the galaxy, we wouldn't have enough firepower to damage them significantly. A terrible silence fell over the hall. Math didn't lie, and the numbers painted a picture of complete extinction. The Devourers would consume world after world until nothing remained but their ever-growing fleet of bioships. There is one possibility, said a small voice. Communications technician Veltar stepped forward from his station near the back wall. His species was unremarkable. Average height, brown skin, 4 arms adapted for operating complex equipment. He was the kind of being who usually stayed invisible during important meetings. The Earth terminal, he continued, his voice shaking slightly. It's been maintained all these years. The connection is still active. If someone activated it? No, said Admiral Thexun firmly. We've made our decision as a civilized society. We don't call monsters to solve our problems. Veltar's shoulders slumped, but his eyes kept drifting toward the Earth terminal. He had family on Rigel Prime. His children went to school there, played in the crystal gardens his grandfather had planted decades ago. In 18 hours, all of that would be gone. As the debate continued around him, Veltar quietly made his way toward the dusty corner where humanity waited. The argument in the council hall had been going on for 3 hours. Ambassador after ambassador stood up to give speeches about dignity, civilization, and proper military conduct. Meanwhile, the clock showed that Rigel Prime had less than 15 hours before the Devourer fleet arrived. Veltar sat at his communication station, but his mind wasn't on his normal duties. He kept thinking about his daughter's last message. She had sent him a recording of her school play, where children from a dozen different species acted out the story of the first contact wars. His little girl had played a human diplomat, complete with a costume that made her look like she had only 2 arms instead of 4. "Daddy," she had said in the message, "the humans in the play were scary, but they were also heroes. Do you think real humans are like that?" Now Veltar wondered if the galaxy would get a chance to find out. "We cannot abandon our principles," Admiral Thexan was saying for the 5th time. "The moment we call Earth, we admit that civilization has failed. We become no better than the monsters we fight." "Principles don't stop bioships from eating planets," muttered Ambassador Kelethis. General Korth stood up, his red scales gleaming. "I've reviewed every tactical option. If we gather every available warship from across the galaxy, we might be able to slow down the Devourer fleet for a few days. But stopping them? Impossible with conventional weapons." "Then we develop unconventional weapons," suggested Dr. Quillen. "Our scientists are brilliant. Given time, they could surely find a solution." "How much time?" asked Council Leader Morath. "Because right now we're losing a star system every few days. In 2 months, there won't be anyone left to develop anything." The main screen updated with new sensor data. The Devourer fleet had accelerated again. Their estimated arrival at Rigel Prime had moved up by 2 hours. 47 billion beings now had 13 hours to live, and the number kept dropping. Veltar looked around the hall at all the important ambassadors and military leaders. They all had the same expression, the look of people who knew they were discussing a problem they couldn't solve. He thought about his daughter again, probably asleep in her bed on Rigel Prime, trusting that the adults would somehow keep her safe. His 4 hands moved without his conscious decision. One reached for the activation switch while another typed in his authorization code. The Earth terminal had been built to allow emergency activation by any certified communications officer. Veltar definitely qualified. "What are you doing?" asked his supervisor, looking over from the neighboring console. Veltar hesitated for just a moment. If he pressed this button, he would be making a decision for the entire galaxy. The Council had specifically voted against contacting Earth. But the Council wasn't about to lose their children in 13 hours. He pressed the button. Immediately, warning lights began flashing around the Earth terminal. A low tone sounded through the hall, different from any other alarm they used. Every ambassador turned to look as the dusty black console came to life for the first time in over 2 centuries. "Earth Communications Array Online" appeared on screens throughout the hall, awaiting transmission. The silence that followed was so complete that Veltar could hear his own heart beating in his ears. Hundreds of representatives from across the galaxy stared at him in shock, fear, and something that might have been relief. "Technician Veltar," said Council Leader Morath, her voice carefully controlled, "explain your actions." Veltar stood up from his station. His legs felt shaky, but his voice came out steady. "My family lives on Rigel Prime. My children go to school there. In 13 hours, they're going to die unless someone does something to save them." He looked around the hall at all the powerful beings who had been arguing while people died. "You've spent 3 hours talking about principles. I spent 3 seconds thinking about my kids." "You've just committed an act of treason against the galactic government," Admiral Thexan said coldly. "Do you understand what you've done?" "I've opened a communication channel," Veltar replied. Nothing more. The choice of whether to actually send a message is still yours. Ambassador HFY stood up from his crystal seat. But the channel is open. Earth knows we've activated their terminal. They're waiting for us to say something. The thought sent ripples of fear through the assembly. After 2 centuries of silence, humanity was listening again. Whatever the Council decided to do next, Earth would know about it. "We could send a simple message," suggested Ambassador Kelethis quietly. "Just information about the threat. Let them decide whether to respond." "Any message we send admits that we need their help," pointed out General Korth. "The moment we explain our situation to the humans, we're asking them to save us." Dr. Quillen studied his data tablet. "From a scientific perspective, there's no shame in consulting with experts. The humans have successfully dealt with galaxy-threatening enemies before. Their experience could be valuable." "Their experience nearly destroyed 2 galaxies," Admiral Thexan reminded him. Another update flashed on the main screen. The Devourer fleet had split into 3 groups, moving to attack multiple systems simultaneously. Rigel Prime was still their main target, but now they were also heading for the industrial world of Mechanicus and the agricultural colonies around Vega. "3 systems at once," whispered Council Leader Morath. "Over 100 billion beings." Veltar looked at the Earth terminal screen. A simple text box waited for input, labeled Transmission Composition. Below it, a cursor blinked patiently, waiting for someone to type the words that would either save the galaxy or damn it. "Someone has to make a choice," he said. "The Devourers don't care about our politics or our fears. They're coming whether we're ready or not." Ambassador HFY walked over to the Earth terminal. His crystal fingers hovered over the keyboard for a long moment. "If we do this," he said slowly, "there's no going back. Once we call Earth, we accept whatever comes next." "And if we don't," replied Veltar, "there won't be anyone left to regret the decision." The crystal being began to type. His message was simple. "Earth Command, this is the Galactic Council. We face extinction from an enemy called the Devourer Fleet, bioships that consume star systems. Conventional weapons ineffective. Request immediate consultation." He paused, his finger over the send button. Around him, the entire hall held its breath. "For the record," said Ambassador HFY, "I want it noted that this action is taken under emergency protocols to preserve galactic civilization." He pressed send. The message disappeared into space, traveling instantly to a small blue planet that the galaxy had tried very hard to forget. Now all they could do was wait to see whether humanity still remembered them. The response from Earth came in just 4 hours. Veltar had expected days of silence, maybe weeks, while the humans decided whether the galaxy was worth saving. Instead, a simple message appeared on every screen in the council hall. "Message received. Response fleet dispatching immediately. Do not engage primary Devourer force. Avoid direct contact until our arrival. Prepare for unconventional tactics. Admiral Sarah Chen, Terran Defense Initiative." "That's it?" asked General Korth, staring at the screen. "No demands for apologies, no conditions, no political negotiations?" Ambassador HFY studied the message. "It's very direct, very human." "They're coming," whispered Ambassador Kelethis. "After 200 years, the humans are actually coming to help us." The relief in the hall was mixed with growing nervousness. Everyone knew stories about human military tactics, but those stories were old. What had humanity become during their centuries of isolation? Were they still the same species that had terrified the galaxy into cutting contact? "How long until they arrive?" asked Council Leader Morath. Admiral Thexan checked his tactical displays. "Earth is 300 light-years from the nearest Devourer position. Even with their fastest ships, they can't get here in less than 6 days. The Rigel system will be consumed long before then. As if summoned by his words, an update flashed across the main screen. The Devourer fleet had reached Rigel Prime's outer planets and begun their feeding process. The gas giant Rigel 7 disappeared in less than an hour, its entire mass converted into bioship fuel. 47 billion people, said Veltar quietly. Gone in one day. But something strange started happening. Small ships began appearing throughout the Rigel system, not large battle cruisers or carriers, but tiny vessels no bigger than shuttlecraft. They didn't attack the Devourer bioships. Instead, they seemed to dance around them, staying just out of reach while scanning everything. Those ships aren't in our databases, reported a sensor technician. The design is completely unknown. Admiral Thexon enhanced the image on the main screen. The small vessels were sleek and angular, built with technology that looked both familiar and alien. How did they get there so fast? It's impossible to travel from Earth to Rigel in 4 hours. Dr. Quillen was studying energy readings from the mysterious ships. Their propulsion systems are producing readings I've never seen before. It's as if they're not moving through space normally. More reports started coming in from across the galaxy. Similar small ships had appeared in every system where Devourers were active. They didn't fight, but they watched everything, recording data and transmitting it back to some unknown location. The humans are studying them, realized Ambassador Lyren. They're analyzing the Devourer bioships in real time. 3 days passed. The human observer ships continued their strange dance around the Devourers, always staying just out of reach. Meanwhile, more star systems fell. Mechanicus Prime lasted 18 hours before its industrial cities were consumed. The Vega agricultural colonies went silent, one by one. On the 4th day, everything changed. "Incoming transmission from the human fleet," announced Veltar from his communication station. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the main screen, a human woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that seemed to look right through whoever she was talking to. Behind her, the bridge of her ship showed technology that made the Council's best equipment look primitive. "Council representatives," she said without any greeting ceremony, "we've completed our analysis of the Devourer threat. The situation is more serious than you realized." "More serious?" asked Council Leader Morath. "They're consuming entire star systems. How could it be worse?" "Because they're not just eating for food," Admiral Chen replied. "They're preparing for something. Our xenobiology teams have identified reproduction patterns in their bioships. In approximately 2 months, they'll spawn a second fleet twice their current size." The council hall erupted in panicked voices. If the current Devourer fleet was already unstoppable, what would happen when it doubled in size? Admiral Chen waited for the noise to die down before continuing. "However, we've also identified their weakness. The entire fleet operates through a shared consciousness controlled by 3 queen-mind entities. Destroy those 3 ships, and the rest of the fleet becomes mindless and easy to eliminate." "Where are these queen-mind ships?" asked General Korth. "Hidden in the center of their formation, protected by over 400 bioships. No conventional military assault could reach them." Admiral Thexon spread his golden wings in frustration. "Then how do you propose to destroy them?" Admiral Chen's expression didn't change. "We've developed a targeted biological weapon, a virus that will attack the Queen Mind's neural networks and spread through their shared consciousness. It will kill the entire fleet within hours." The hall went completely silent. Ambassador Valix of the Harmony Collective was the first to speak. "You're talking about biological warfare, about creating a disease designed to kill an entire species." "Yes," Admiral Chen said simply. That's genocide," whispered Dr. Quillen. "It's survival," the human admiral replied. "The Devourers cannot be negotiated with, cannot be contained, cannot be reformed. They exist only to consume everything else in the universe. They are, by definition, a threat to all life. Ambassador Zexhai stood up from his crystal seat. What you're proposing goes against every principle of civilized warfare. We don't exterminate entire species, no matter how dangerous they are. Then you die, Admiral Chen said without emotion. Those are your choices. Authorize biological warfare against an enemy that shows no mercy, or watch them consume every living thing in this galaxy. There has to be another way, insisted Ambassador Kelethis. Some method that doesn't require us to become monsters. For the first time, Admiral Chen's expression softened slightly. I understand your reluctance. My species struggled with the same moral questions during the Andromedan War. We chose survival over principles then, and we're prepared to make the same choice now. But we won't act without your permission. What do you mean? Asked Council Leader Morath. The virus is ready for deployment. Our infiltration teams have already reached 2 of the 3 Queen Mind ships. We can complete this mission within 6 hours. Admiral Chen's gray eyes swept across the Council assembly. But we'll only proceed with formal authorization from this Council. The choice is yours. The human Admiral's image disappeared, leaving the Council alone with the most terrible decision in galactic history. Outside, the Devourer fleet continued consuming worlds, growing stronger with each passing hour. In 6 hours, humanity could end the threat forever. But only if the galaxy was willing to abandon everything they believed about civilized behavior. They're asking us to authorize genocide, said Admiral Thexan quietly. They're asking us to survive, replied Veltar. The vote that would determine the fate of every living being in the galaxy was about to begin. The debate lasted 8 hours. 8 hours while the Devourer fleet consumed 2 more agricultural worlds and began surrounding the heavily populated Centauri system. 8 hours while Admiral Chen's teams waited in position around the Queen Mind ships, ready to deploy their biological weapon. Ambassador after ambassador stood to speak. Some talked about the sacred nature of life and the importance of finding peaceful solutions. Others pointed to the tactical displays showing system after system going dark. The mathematical projections were clear. Without intervention, the galaxy would be completely consumed within 4 months. We're talking about deliberately creating a virus designed to kill, said Ambassador Valix, her harmonious voice filled with pain. Once we cross that line, how are we different from the monsters we fight? Because we're trying to save lives, not destroy them, replied Ambassador Kelethis. The Devourers have already killed over 200 billion beings. How many more have to die before we admit that nice solutions don't work? General Korth had been studying tactical reports all day. I've run every simulation our computers can handle. There is no conventional military solution to this threat. The Devourers adapt too quickly, grow too fast, and learn from every engagement. The human biological weapon is the only viable option. Then we're admitting our civilization has failed, said Admiral Thexan bitterly. We're saying that 2,000 years of galactic cooperation and peaceful development mean nothing when faced with a real threat. Ambassador Zexhai had been silent for most of the debate, but now he stood from his crystal seat. Perhaps that's exactly what we need to admit. Maybe our civilization only works when everyone agrees to be civilized. What do we do when faced with an enemy that doesn't follow our rules? Dr. Quillen adjusted his translation device. From a scientific perspective, the Devourers are an ecological disaster. They represent an evolutionary dead end, a species that consumes everything without creating anything. In biological terms, they're a cancer on the galaxy. But they're still a sentient species, insisted Ambassador Valix. They think, they plan, they coordinate. We can't just exterminate them because they're inconvenient. Can't we? The question came from Veltar, who had been quiet since his act of defiance 4 days earlier. My children are dead now. Rigel Prime was consumed yesterday while we debated ethics. 47 billion people are gone because we were too civilized to act quickly. The hall fell silent. Everyone knew Veltar had lost family in the Rigel system. but he hadn't spoken about it until now. "I pressed that button to call Earth because I wanted to save my kids," he continued, his voice steady despite the tears on his face. "I failed. They're gone. But maybe their deaths can mean something if we save everyone else's children." Council Leader Morath's tentacles writhed with emotion. "The vote must be taken. All in favor of authorizing human biological warfare against the Devourer fleet?" The silence stretched for long moments. Then, slowly, hands and tentacles and appendages began to rise throughout the hall. Not all of them, but enough. The count was closer than anyone had expected. 847 votes in favor, 623 opposed, with 112 abstentions. "The motion carries," announced Morath. "May whatever gods watch over us forgive what we're about to do." The message was sent to Admiral Chen immediately. Her response came within minutes. "Authorization received. Beginning final phase operations. Recommend all Council ships maintain minimum safe distance of 50 light-years from Devourer positions." What happened next would be studied and debated for centuries. The human infiltration teams had somehow managed to place their biological weapon aboard all 3 Queen Mine ships without triggering any defensive responses. The virus they had created was a masterpiece of deadly precision, designed to target only the specific neural patterns found in Devourer bioships. The attack began at 1430 Galactic Standard Time. At first, nothing seemed to change. The massive bioships continued their approach toward Centauri Prime, their hull surfaces pulsing with the same alien patterns as always. Long-range sensors showed no obvious signs of damage or distress. Then, one by one, the ships began to go dark. It started with the smaller vessels at the edges of the formation. Their bioluminescent patterns flickered and died like lights being turned off. The ships didn't explode or break apart. They simply stopped moving and went silent. "The virus is spreading through their shared consciousness," reported Dr. Quill-N, watching data streams from the human observer ships. "It's moving faster than our models predicted." Within 2 hours, half the Devourer fleet was dead. The remaining bioships seemed to sense something was wrong and began moving erratically, breaking formation as they tried to escape whatever was killing them. But there was nowhere to run from a virus that spread through the very mental connection that held their species together. By the end of the day, it was over. Over 800 bioships hung motionless in space, their massive hulls already beginning to decompose without the life force that had sustained them. The greatest threat the galaxy had ever faced was extinct. Admiral Chen's final transmission was as direct as her first. "Devourer fleet eliminated. No survivors detected. Human ships returning to Earth. Contact protocols updated. You now have permanent communication access. Use it when you need us. Admiral Chen, out." The victory celebrations lasted for weeks across the galaxy. Billions of beings who had been preparing for evacuation or death suddenly had their lives back. The Centauri system was safe. The core worlds were safe. Civilization would continue. But the celebrations were mixed with troubled thoughts. The galaxy had been saved by methods they had once considered barbaric. They had authorized genocide to prevent genocide. The humans had given them exactly what they asked for: survival at any cost. 6 months later, Ambassador Zexhai stood in the same council hall where the terrible decision had been made. The room looked exactly the same, but somehow felt different. In the corner, the Earth terminal no longer sat covered in dust. It was active now, maintained and ready for use whenever the galaxy needed to call on humanity's expertise. "We saved ourselves," he said quietly to Ambassador Kelethis. "But we also learned something about ourselves that we might not have wanted to know." "That we're willing to do anything to survive?" she asked. "That sometimes the monsters we fear are the only ones who can protect us from bigger monsters," Zexhai replied. The galaxy was safe, but it was also changed. They had learned that civilization was a luxury they could only afford when everyone agreed to be civilized. When faced with an enemy that played by no rules, they had discovered they could abandon their own rules surprisingly quickly. The Earth terminal waited in its corner, a reminder that humanity was still out there, still watching, still ready to do what needed to be done. The galaxy had its protectors now, but they were protectors who understood that some threats required absolute solutions. In the end, the price of victory wasn't just the extinction of the Devourers, it was the knowledge that civilization sometimes needed monsters to defend it, and that the galaxy was willing to call on those monsters when survival was at stake. The humans had given them one final gift along with salvation. They had shown the galaxy exactly what it was willing to become when everything else was on the line. Whether that knowledge was a blessing or a curse remained to be seen.